My family has always had this talent for turning my wins into jokes before they even have time to breathe. If I made a smart choice, they'd call it cute. If I made a careful plan, they'd call it paranoid. If I took a step forward, they'd laugh like it was a step down. So when I told them I'd moved into a studio, I already knew what was coming. I just didn't expect how fast they'd choke on their own laughter once the truth surfaced. My name is Savannah, and I was 30 when this happened. I'd spent most of my 20s being the responsible one in a family that liked responsibility only when it made their lives easier. My little brother Tyler was the golden child, charming, loud, always having potential, always figuring things out, which was code for he could fail as many times as he wanted and still be adored. I was the one who got asked to fix things, help with paperwork, lend money just until payday, babysit, drive someone to the airport, smile through disrespect because family is family. And for years I did, because I thought if I stayed helpful long enough, they'd finally see me. But the older I got, the more I realized they didn't want to see me. They wanted to use me. The studio wasn't a downgrade. It was a plan. A quiet plan I'd been building for 2 years. After a brutal breakup that left me with a shattered sense of trust and a lease I couldn't afford alone, I stopped doing what my family expected, running back to them for rescue. Instead, I got disciplined. I took on extra freelance work at night. I sold half my closet. I stopped buying little treats. I created a separate savings account that my family didn't know existed. I tracked every dollar like my future depended on it, because it did. The goal wasn't to look rich. The goal was to be free. I chose a studio on purpose. Not because I couldn't afford more, but because I was tired of financing everyone else's emergencies with my comfort. A studio meant lower utilities, lower rent, fewer temptations to fill rooms with stuff I didn't need. It was a reset button. My brother laughed as soon as I said the word. A studio? Tyler repeated like he'd never heard something more embarrassing. We were at my mom's dining table when I told them. Sunday dinner, the weekly family performance where everyone took turns judging each other while pretending it was love. My mom's fork paused midair. Then she smiled, not warm, amused. "Oh, honey," she said, "a studio is what you get when you're 21 and broke." My dad let out a short laugh. "So what happened?" he asked. "You couldn't swing a one-bedroom?" Tyler smirked. "Does it come with a hot plate?" He made a sizzling noise and laughed at his own joke. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap and let them finish. That was my new habit. Don't interrupt people while they reveal themselves. "It's perfect for me," I said calmly. Tyler leaned back, smug. "Perfect," he repeated like he was tasting the lie. "Sure." My mom sipped her wine. "Well," she said, "at least you won't have room to adopt another sad plant." They all laughed again. Like my life was a punchline. I smiled softly, not because it was funny, but because I'd stopped needing their approval. "When can we see it?" my mom asked, still smirking. That question wasn't curiosity. It was entertainment. She wanted to walk through my studio and confirm her story. Savannah is struggling. Savannah is small. Savannah needs us. For a second, I considered saying no. Protect my peace. Keep them out. But then I remembered something important. People like my family only respect what they can measure. And I had something they couldn't argue with. "Sure," I said calmly. "Come by Saturday. I'll show you." Tyler's eyes lit up like he was getting tickets to a comedy show. "Oh, I'm coming," he said, grinning. "I need to see this." My mom nodded like she'd already decided what she'd say afterward. "We'll bring a housewarming gift," she said sweetly. I nodded. "Great," I said. "Just come." All week I prepped the studio, not because I was ashamed, but because I was proud. It was small, yes, but it was mine. Clean white walls, warm light, a little kitchen corner with a real stove, not a hot plate, A Murphy bed that folded up into a sleek cabinet so the room could become a living space during the day. A tiny balcony that looked out at trees instead of parking lots. It wasn't luxury. It was intentional. On Friday night, I placed one thing on my kitchen counter, a manila folder. Inside it was the deed. Not a lease. Not a rental agreement. A deed with my name printed clearly on the first page. Because here's the twist my family didn't know. I hadn't moved into a studio. I'd bought it. Quietly. With my savings. With my discipline. With all the money I stopped giving away. My family thought a studio meant I was failing. But to me, it meant I'd finally stopped funding their comfort and started building my own. And Saturday was going to be the day they learned the difference, whether they liked it or not. Saturday came with bright sun and the kind of calm I only felt when I knew the truth and everyone else was still performing a lie. I woke up early, made coffee, and walked through my studio like I was blessing it, touching the countertop, straightening a pillow, opening the balcony door to let in clean air. Not because I needed it perfect. Because I needed my nervous system to remember, this space is safe. This space is mine. At 11:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. Mom, we're outside. I looked out through the blinds and saw them standing on the sidewalk like a little panel of judges. The mom in her nice blouse and sunglasses. Dad with his hands on his hips like he was about to inspect a construction site. Tyler leaning on his car, smirking like he'd already written the jokes. I took a slow breath, unlocked the door, and stepped into the hallway. The moment I opened the building's main entry, my mom's eyes went up and down the exterior like she was evaluating whether it was good enough. "This is cute," she said immediately, which was her favorite word for anything she wanted to shrink. Tyler laughed under his breath. "Cute," he repeated. Dad looked around the lobby, then muttered, "Not bad. But it's still small, right?" Like size was the only marker of success. I didn't correct them. I just smiled politely. "Come on," I said. In the elevator, Tyler pressed the button like he was in charge. "So what floor is your shoebox on?" he asked, grinning. I kept my voice calm. "Third," I said. Mom sighed dramatically. "At least you're not on the ground floor," she said. "You know, safety and all." Safety. Another coded insult. You can't protect yourself. You need us. When we got to my door, I let them stand there for 1 second longer than necessary, so they could feel that little moment of anticipation, like they were about to enter a scene they already thought they understood. Then I unlocked it and opened the door wide. My studio had warm light pouring in from the balcony. The walls were clean. The floors were polished. The Murphy bed was folded up, so the room looked spacious, almost like a small modern living room. A little dining table for two sat by the window. Plant on the sill. Everything neat, intentional, calm. My mom blinked. Dad's eyebrows lifted. Tyler's smirk wavered for half a second. Then they recovered. Mom walked in first, slowly turning her head like she was looking for flaws. "Well," she said, forcing a laugh, "it's nicer than I expected." That wasn't a compliment. It was an admission that she'd expected me to fail. Dad walked to the kitchenette and opened a cabinet like he owned the place. "So you rent this?" he asked casually. I didn't answer yet. I just watched him touch my space like he had a right. Tyler went straight to the Murphy bed cabinet and knocked on it. "So this is where you sleep?" he asked, laughing. "Like a transformer?" He mimed pulling it down. "Don't break it," I said calmly. Tyler held up his hands, still smirking. "Relax," he said. "I'm not trying to make your bed eat me." Mom wandered toward the bathroom, peeking inside like she was touring a hotel. "It's clean," she said, surprised again. Then she turned, eyes narrowing slightly. "How much is this place?" she asked. I smiled softly. "A manageable number," I said. Dad snorted. "Translation, too much," he said. Mom chimed in quickly. Well, as long as you're not wasting money you don't have. You know you can always come back home if this gets hard. There it was again. The invitation disguised as concern. Come back. Be small. Let us be right. Tyler plopped onto my little chair and looked around. No offense, he said, but you could have just stayed with Mom and Dad and saved more. Like, why rush into living alone in a mini box? Mini box. He couldn't stop. He needed the joke to stay alive. 'Cause if the joke died, the truth would rise. I walked to the counter and placed 4 glasses down like I was hosting politely. Do you want water? I asked. Mom waved her hand. No, she said. We brought something. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small gift bag with tissue paper. She handed it to me with a smile that looked sweet to strangers. Housewarming, she said. I took it and looked inside. It was a tiny little decorative sign, white and cursive, that said, Home is where the heart is. Under it, in smaller letters, even if it's small. My stomach tightened. Tyler laughed out loud. Dad chuckled like it was harmless. My mom smiled like she'd just delivered the perfect loving jab. Isn't it adorable? She asked. It'll fit perfectly here. The message was clear. This is all you deserve. I held the sign for a second, then set it calmly on the counter. Thank you, I said politely. That made them blink. They wanted a reaction. An offended look. A defensive speech. I gave them nothing. I just let their gift sit there like evidence. Tyler wandered to my balcony door and slid it open without asking. Nice, he said, leaning out. So what? This is like a starter place. Starter. Like my life was a product line. My dad turned to me again. Seriously, he said, how are you affording this? You still doing that little freelance thing? Little. Always little. I smiled softly. I'm doing well, I said. Dad narrowed his eyes. Well enough to pay for this alone? He asked. I nodded. Yes. My mom's gaze sharpened. Savannah, she said slowly, don't tell me you're putting this on credit cards. I kept my tone calm. No, I said. Tyler scoffed. Okay, then you're renting, he said confidently. Because no way you bought this. I didn't correct him. I just watched the way they formed conclusions like they were facts. My mother wandered back to the center of the room and looked around again, then sighed dramatically. Well, she said, at least you have a roof over your head. That's what matters. That was the line she always used when she wanted to lower the bar for me. To make my success sound like survival. My dad clapped his hands together like a contractor finishing an inspection. All right, he said. So what's the plan? Live here a year, then upgrade? I smiled. Maybe, I said. Tyler laughed. You'll need to find a husband with a real job, he said, grinning. I felt my jaw tighten. Not because it hurt, because it was predictable. He couldn't imagine me building a life without attaching to someone else's money. I walked to the kitchen counter and opened the manila folder. The sound of paper sliding out was small, but in that quiet room it was loud. My mom's eyes flicked toward it. What's that? She asked, suspicious. I pulled out the first page and held it in my hand calmly. This, I said, voice steady, is the deed. Tyler's laugh stopped midair. My dad froze. My mom blinked like she didn't understand the word. Date, she repeated. I nodded once. My name is on it, I said. Then I laid the paper down on the counter, right next to the little, even if it's small sign, so they could see it clearly. And for the first time since they walked in, nobody spoke. 'Cause the joke was dead. And the truth was standing in the room. For a full 5 seconds, the room went quiet in the way it only goes quiet when someone's worldview collapses. My mom stared at the page like it was written in another language. My dad leaned closer, squinting. Tyler's face lost its smugness so fast it was almost funny, like somebody had yanked a mask off him mid-laugh. Then, like always, they tried to recover by rewriting the moment. My mom blinked hard and forced a laugh. "Oh my God," she said, too bright. "Savannah, stop. Is this a joke?" I didn't smile. "No," I said calmly. "It's public record." Dad picked up the paper with both hands and read the top line again, slower, like he didn't trust his eyes. "Savannah Carter," he muttered. "That's you." Tyler leaned forward, voice suddenly softer. "Wait," he said, "you bought this?" That word, bought, landed heavy. It was the word that separated she's struggling from she's ahead. And my family only respected ahead. "Yes," I said simply. Tyler let out a low whistle. "Okay," he said, trying to laugh like he was impressed, not embarrassed. "Okay, that's wow." Mom's face tightened for a split second, jealousy, disbelief, something sharp. Then she pasted on a smile that was almost painful. "Well," she said quickly, "of course you did. You've always been responsible." That was my mom's favorite trick, claim my success as proof of her parenting. Like she wasn't the same woman who laughed at me 10 minutes ago. Dad nodded slowly. "I mean," he said, "good for you." "That's actually smart." Tyler stood up straighter. "Yeah," he said, voice suddenly respectful. "That's a flex. I didn't know you had it like that." Flex. Now I was useful again. I watched them shifting in real time like a camera lens focusing. The same studio they called a shoebox was suddenly smart investment. The same choice they mocked was now responsible. The same me they minimized was now interesting. My mom picked up the little sign she'd gifted me, stared at it, then set it down again too quickly, like it had burned her. "So," she said, smoothing her blouse, "how did you do this? Did you get help?" There it was. The first attempt to take it away. If someone helped you, it doesn't count. "No," I said calmly. "I saved." Dad's eyebrows lifted. "Saved how?" he asked, still half suspicious. Tyler laughed lightly. "She's going to say she ate ramen for 2 years," he joked, but his tone wasn't cruel anymore. It was curious. Because now it mattered. I kept my voice steady. "I worked extra," I said. "I stopped lending money. I stopped paying for other people's emergencies." My mom's smile twitched. Dad coughed once. Tyler looked away for half a second. They all heard the same thing. I stopped funding them. My mom stepped closer to the counter, tapping the deed lightly. "This is impressive," she said, emphasizing the word like she was trying to own it. "I'm proud of you." Proud. 10 minutes earlier, she'd handed me a sign that said, "Even if it's small." I watched her face and realized something. This pride wasn't warm. It was strategic. Dad cleared his throat and tried to sound casual. "So, what did you pay?" he asked. "If you don't mind me asking." I smiled faintly. "I do mind," I said politely. Dad blinked. Tyler's eyebrows shot up. My mom's smile froze again. "Savannah," she said softly, like I was being rude. "We're family." I kept my voice calm. "And I'm an adult homeowner," I replied. "I'm not discussing my finances." Tyler tried to lighten it. Okay, he said quickly, hands up. "Sorry." "Damn. Homeowner energy." He laughed, but it sounded nervous. My mom turned, glancing around the studio again, but now her eyes weren't mocking. They were calculating. "So," she said, "you're going to live here alone?" "Yes," I said. "That's the point." Dad nodded, then said, "You know, property is a big responsibility." His tone shifted into fatherly advice mode, another way of reclaiming authority. "You have to think long-term. Maintenance, taxes, unexpected costs." I nodded once. "I know," I said. That's why I chose a studio. Low overhead. Tyler smirked slightly. Still can't believe you bought it, he said. You didn't even tell us you were looking. My mom's eyes narrowed. Yeah, she echoed, voice sweet but sharp underneath. Why didn't you tell us? That question wasn't curiosity. It was accusation. You didn't give us the chance to influence it. You didn't ask permission. You didn't include us. I met her eyes calmly. Because every time I share my plans, you make them a joke, I said. The air thickened. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. Tyler's smile faded. My mom blinked slowly, offended. That's not fair, she said. We were just teasing. I nodded gently. You called it a shoebox, I said. You asked if I had a hot plate. I pointed at the sign on the counter. You gave me that. My mom's cheeks flushed. It was a joke, she snapped. And now you're turning it into a lecture. Tyler jumped in fast. Okay, he said, laughing too loudly. She got you. She got you. He tried to make it playful, but I could see it. They were uncomfortable because the truth was now attached to an object. The deed. My name. Something they couldn't dismiss as emotional. Dad folded his arms, defensive. Well, he said, if you're doing so well, you could have told us so we didn't worry. I almost smiled. Worry. Another rewrite. They weren't worried. They were entertained. My mom suddenly changed tone, soft, sweet, almost affectionate. Savannah, she said, stepping closer, this is really incredible. You know, family should celebrate you. Celebrate. Here came the hook. I felt it in my bones before she even said it. She wanted something. And when my family suddenly gets warm right after they realize you have assets, it's never about love. It's about access. Tyler rubbed his hands together like he was joking but not joking. So you're like rich now, he said, grinning. My mom shot him a look. Tyler, she hissed. Then she looked back at me, smiling. Anyway, she said lightly, we should take a picture. You in your new place. Something to show the family. Everyone will be so proud. There it was. Image. Not connection. Not apology. Picture. Proof that my mom could claim my success as her trophy. I stared at her calmly. No, I said. One word. Soft. Final. My mom's smile froze completely. What do you mean, no? She asked, voice tightening. I mean no, I repeated calmly. I'm not performing this for anyone. Tyler's face shifted again. Come on, he said, still smiling. It's just a photo. I looked at him. You laughed at me 5 minutes ago, I said quietly. Now you want a photo? Dad's jaw tightened. My mom's voice sharpened. Don't be ungrateful, she snapped. There it was. The switch. The mask slipping. And in that moment, I knew exactly what Part 4 was going to be about. The minute I refused to give them access to my image, my money, my achievement, they would go right back to punishing me. 'Cause pride from them was conditional. Respect from them was rented. And I wasn't renting myself anymore. My mom stared at me like I'd just slapped her because in her world, no wasn't an answer, it was a challenge. Savannah, she said, voice tight and sugary, why are you being like this? We're proud of you. I kept my tone calm. If you were proud, I said, you wouldn't have laughed first. Tyler let out a fake chuckle like he could smooth it over. Okay, he said, we teased. So what? We're here now. Dad folded his arms. You're making it weird, he muttered. Making it weird. That was always the phrase they used when they didn't like the truth. My mom reached for her phone anyway. Just one picture, she insisted, stepping closer. Stand by the window. It'll look nice. I didn't move. No, I repeated, still soft, still final. Her eyes flashed, anger for half a second, then she switched tactics. You know, she said, sighing dramatically, normal families celebrate each other. You always act like we're enemies. I nodded once. I don't act, I said calmly. I respond. Dad tried to insert himself as the reasonable one. All right, he said, hands up, forget the picture. We're not here to fight. Then he glanced at the deed again, and I saw his brain shift gears. We just didn't realize you were doing this well, he said. It's a big deal. Tyler leaned on the counter, suddenly friendly. Honestly, he said, I'm impressed. Like, proud for real. My mom nodded too fast. Yes, she said. So proud. Their praise was piling up like a bridge being built toward something. Then my mom took a breath and said it. Since you're stable now, she began lightly, maybe you could help Tyler get stable too. There it was. Access. Not to my photo. To my money. Tyler's smile sharpened like he was ready. Yeah, he said quickly, I've been looking at apartments, but rent is insane. If you could just spot me like a small amount for a deposit, Dad cut in with that fake practical tone. It wouldn't be a handout, he said. Just a loan. He'd pay you back. My mom nodded. Exactly, she said. You know how hard it is for young people. Young people. Tyler was 26. I'd been paying my own bills since 19. But in their world, young meant protected. I kept my voice calm. No, I said. Tyler blinked. What? He asked, half laughing like he hadn't heard me right. No, I repeated. I'm not lending money. My mom's jaw tightened instantly. Savannah, she warned, don't be selfish. He's your brother. I looked at her steadily. I became a homeowner by stopping family loans, I said. That's the whole point. Dad's voice hardened. So you're going to sit here in your little place with your little deed and act like you're above us? Above. There it was again. Any boundary became arrogance. Tyler scoffed. Wow, he muttered. So you're rich now and you can't help your own brother. Cool. My mom reached for the guilt like it was a tool in a drawer. After everything we've done for you, she said, voice rising. I didn't flinch. You didn't do this, I said calmly. I did. Silence. Tyler's face tightened. Dad stared at the floor. My mom's lips pressed into that thin line she got when she couldn't bully me without looking ugly. Then she tried another angle image. Fine, she snapped, forcing a smile again. If you're not helping financially, then at least let us celebrate you publicly. A photo. A post. Your aunt will be so happy. I shook my head. No, I said. I'm not being used as proof you're good parents. The air went cold. My mom's eyes widened. Used? She repeated, offended. How dare you? Tyler laughed harshly. You're so dramatic, he said. Nobody's using you. I nodded once. Then you wouldn't have laughed, I said. And you wouldn't have asked for money 5 minutes after reading my deed. Dad's face tightened because he knew it was true. My mom snapped. We didn't ask for money. We asked for help. I held her gaze. Money is what you meant, I said. My mom's cheeks flushed. You think you're so smart, she hissed. Dad stepped forward like he wanted to regain control of the conversation. Listen, he said, Tyler's been struggling. He needs a little boost. That's what family does. I nodded slowly. Family also doesn't humiliate you at dinner for making a smart decision, I said calmly. Family doesn't call your home a shoebox and then demand access once it has value. Tyler's voice rose. I didn't demand, you asked, I said, still even. And my answer is no. My mom exhaled sharply like she was about to explode. Then she did something I'd seen her do 100 times. She tried to turn the whole room against me. "Do you hear her?" she said loudly, looking at Dad and Tyler. "She's cold. Therapy has made her cold. She doesn't care about anyone." Tyler nodded, playing along. "Yeah," he said. "She's always been like this, honestly." Dad didn't agree out loud, but he didn't stop them either. He just looked uncomfortable, which was his version of participating. I stared at them and felt something settle into place. This was never about my studio. It was about control. If they couldn't control my choices, they wanted to control my story. If they couldn't take my money, they wanted to take my image. And when I refused both, they needed me to be the villain, because otherwise they'd have to face what they were. I took a slow breath and said the sentence that made the room go silent again. "I'm happy to have a relationship," I said calmly. "But it won't include access to my finances, my property, or my narrative." My mom froze. Tyler blinked. Dad's eyebrows lifted. "Your narrative?" My mom snapped. I nodded once. "Yes," I said. "You don't get to laugh at me privately and brag publicly. You don't get to shame me and then claim me." Tyler scoffed, but his voice sounded weaker. "So what, you're cutting us off?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'm setting terms," I said. "Adults do that." My mom's eyes narrowed like knives. "Adults also help their family," she hissed. I smiled faintly, not amused, just clear. "Adults also don't confuse guilt with love," I said. Dad finally spoke, voice low. "Savannah, you're really changed," he muttered. I nodded. "I'm finally done paying for being the responsible one," I said. My mom grabbed her purse like she was ending a negotiation. "Fine," she snapped. "Enjoy your little kingdom." Tyler shook his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Dad lingered a second longer, eyes flicking around my studio like he was realizing it wasn't just a room, it was my exit. Then he followed them out. I walked them to the door without begging, without apologizing. My mom paused at the threshold and looked back with that cold smile. "Don't come crying when something breaks," she said. I nodded calmly. "I won't," I replied. I closed the door softly behind them and leaned against it for a second, letting my heartbeat slow. Then my phone buzzed. Text from Tyler. "Tyler, since you're doing so well, can you co-sign for me at least?" I stared at it and almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was perfectly on brand. They didn't see my deed as my achievement. They saw it as a resource they could tap. And in part 5, I didn't reply with anger. I replied with something smarter, something that made them realize the deed wasn't just paper. It was boundaries made legal. Tyler's text sat on my screen like the final form of entitlement. "Since you're doing so well, can you co-sign for me at least?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I was scared. Because I'd learned that immediate replies are how people like my family keep you emotionally hooked. They throw a request, then they wait for you to jump. So I waited. I made tea. I washed the 2 glasses they'd used. I folded the blanket on my chair. I let my body come back down to normal. Then I replied with one sentence. "Me, no. I don't co-sign for anyone." That was it. No explanation. No apology. No, maybe later. Just a boundary. Tyler replied within 30 seconds like he'd been hovering over his phone. "Tyler, wow. You're really going to do me like that?" I didn't respond. Because the point wasn't to win a text fight. Point was to stop being a resource. 10 minutes later, Mom called. I didn't pick up. She called again. I didn't pick up. Then a text popped in. "Mom, answer me. You're breaking this family." I stared at the words and felt that old reflex try to rise. Explain, calm, manage. But I didn't. Instead, I wrote a single reply. "Me, I'm not discussing money or property. If you want to talk respectfully, we can. If not, we're done. I set the phone down. I expected silence. What I got was escalation. By that evening, my Aunt Marlene texted me. Aunt Marlene, your mother is devastated. Tyler is struggling. Why are you acting so cold? Then my cousin Brooke. Brooke, Mom says you bought a place and now you think you're better than everyone. What's going on? The story was spreading, already rewritten. I hadn't even posted a photo and somehow I was the villain of a family movie I didn't audition for. I took a breath and answered Brooke with calm facts. Me, I bought a studio. They mocked it. Then they asked me for money and a cosign. I said no. That's all. Brooke's reply came slow. Brooke, they asked for money on the same day? Me, yes. Then Brooke, wow. That's bold. I didn't reply after that. Because I wasn't recruiting allies. I was refusing to be managed by group chat pressure. The next day, I got a message from Dad. Dad, call me. It's important. My stomach tightened. Dad didn't say important often unless something was actually happening. I hesitated, then called. He answered immediately, voice low, like he was hiding in a room somewhere. Savannah, he said, your mother is upset. I almost laughed. Course she was. But then he added, Tyler got denied for an apartment. I stayed calm. Okay, I said. Dad sighed. He needs help, he said, and there it was, the pivot. If you co-sign, he can move out and get stable. I held the phone to my ear and stared at the wall. Dad, I said quietly, if Tyler can't qualify on his own, that means the risk becomes mine. Dad's tone hardened. He's your brother, he repeated, like blood was a contract. I stayed calm. And I'm your daughter, I said. You didn't protect me from being used. You're asking me to volunteer for it. Silence. Then Dad said, your mother thinks you're punishing everyone because you're resentful. I felt my jaw tighten. I'm not punishing, I said evenly. I'm preventing. Dad exhaled. Preventing what? He asked. I said it plainly. Preventing Tyler from missing payments and ruining my credit. Preventing Mom from deciding my home is now the family backup plan. Preventing you from calling me every time someone needs saving. Dad went quiet again. Then he tried a softer tone. Okay, he said, then what about just a small loan? $2,000. Tyler can pay you back. The same script, different wrapping. I kept my voice calm. No, I said. I don't do loans with family anymore. Dad's voice sharpened. So you're really going to let your brother struggle while you sit in your place? There it was, the guilt, the moral framing. I swallowed, then said something I'd never said out loud to him. Tyler isn't struggling, I said. Tyler is inconvenienced. There's a difference. Dad's breathing changed. That's not fair, he muttered. I stayed calm. He laughed at my home, I said. Then he asked for access to it. Dad tried to interrupt. I continued. He called me selfish. Mom called me ungrateful. And not once did any of you apologize. Dad went quiet. Then he said, your mother wouldn't apologize even if she wanted to. That sentence hit me like a confession. Like he was admitting she was incapable. I said, then she doesn't get access. Dad sighed, tired. So what now? He asked. Now I live my life, I said. And you stop calling me when Tyler wants something. Dad didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just sounded defeated. Fine, he said. But don't expect us to be there when you need help. I almost smiled. You weren't there when I needed respect, I said softly. So nothing changes. I hung up with my heart pounding but my hands steady. That night, my mom posted on Facebook. I didn't see it directly. Brooke sent me a screenshot. It was a vague post about children who forget their roots and money changing people. Comments poured in, "Stay strong, Mama." Some people don't appreciate family. My mom loved the sympathy. Sympathy was her currency. And for 1 second, I felt the urge to respond publicly, to correct it, to defend myself. Then I remembered the rule: don't wrestle in the mud with people who enjoy it. Instead, I did something cleaner. I messaged my mom privately one last time. Please stop discussing me publicly. I won't respond online, but I will protect my peace offline. If you continue, I will block you. Her reply came instantly. Mom, block me then. You're heartless. I stared at the screen, felt my chest tighten, and then, without a dramatic breath, I blocked her. Then I blocked Tyler. Then, for the first time in my adult life, I blocked the door they'd always used to walk into my mind. The next morning, I felt lighter. Not happy. Not triumphant. Just free. And that's when the twist happened. Because a week later, the call came from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. A woman's voice, tight, nervous. "Hi," she said. "Is this Savannah Carter?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "This is Denise from Riverside Title Services," she said. "I'm calling about a lien notice that was attempted to be filed against your property." My stomach dropped. "A lien?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "It appears someone tried to use your address and partial identity information in a financial filing connected to a personal loan." The room went cold. I sat down slowly. "Who?" I asked, voice steady but sharp. There was a pause. Then she said the name. "Tyler Carter. My brother." And in that moment, I realized my family didn't just want access to my success. They were willing to pull it into their mess whether I agreed or not. Part 6 wasn't about feelings anymore. It was about protection. And I was about to make a move that would end the game permanently. For a second, I couldn't even speak. A lien notice. Against my studio. With my name on the deed. Tyler's name on the filing. My family wasn't just asking anymore, they were reaching. Grabbing. Testing the locks on my life to see if anything was still loose. "Can you repeat that?" I asked Denise, keeping my voice steady because panic doesn't help paperwork. "Someone attempted to file a lien notice using your property address," she explained. "It didn't go through fully because the documentation didn't match. But it triggered a flag in the system. We wanted to make sure you're aware." My fingers tightened around my phone. "What exactly did he try to do?" I asked. Denise hesitated the way people do when they can tell a story is messy. "It looks like a personal loan was taken out," she said carefully, "and your address was listed as a connected asset location. In some cases, lenders try to secure repayment through filings, especially if they believe there's a property involved." My mouth went dry. "But he can't do that," I said. "He's not on the deed." "Correct," she said. "He can't legally attach anything to your property without a valid claim. That's why it failed." But this is still concerning. Concerning. That was an understatement. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wall while she continued. "I recommend you pull your credit reports," Denise said. "Place a fraud alert or freeze. And if you're concerned about identity misuse, file a report." My stomach churned. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Tyler didn't accidentally type my address. He knew exactly what he was doing. He couldn't get what he wanted with permission, so he tried to do it sideways. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I appreciate you calling." After I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call my parents to ask why. 'Cause I already knew why. They felt entitled. Entitlement is never rational. Entitlement only recognizes consequences. So I moved like someone handling a fire, fast, calm, and thorough. Step 1, I froze my credit. all 3 bureaus. Step 2, I pulled my report and scanned every account like a detective. Step 3, I called my bank and added extra authentication. Step 4, I called my homeowner's insurance and asked about any protections for fraudulent claims. By lunchtime, my brain was running like a machine, but underneath it I felt something else, grief. Not for my brother. For the version of family I'd kept hoping existed. Because if Tyler was willing to tie my property to his loan, then my success wasn't just unwanted. It was a target. That afternoon, I called a friend from work, Nadia, whose sister was a paralegal. "Don't talk to them," Nadia warned me immediately. "Get it documented. If he used your address and any identity info, you treat it as fraud." Her sister, Kelsey, sent me a checklist that read like a war plan. Save all texts, requests for cosign loans. Screenshot any social posts. Request any available filing details from the title service. File an identity theft report if needed. Send a formal cease and desist to Tyler. Notify parents in writing only, no calls. Reading it, my chest tightened. A cease and desist. Against my brother. In my family, that would be labeled cold, dramatic, unforgivable. But I was done being afraid of labels. Labels are how people like them keep you obedient. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I unblocked Tyler for exactly 1 minute. Not to argue. To send a single text that created a record. I was contacted by a title company about an attempted lien filing tied to your loan using my address/property. Do not use my address, name, or property in any financial activity. All communication will be in writing. Then I blocked him again. 10 minutes later, the calls started. Unknown number. Unknown number. Unknown number. They were using someone else's phones now. Classic. I didn't answer. Then Dad texted from his number. "Dad, unblock your brother. This is a misunderstanding." My stomach twisted. Misunderstanding. The family's favorite word for betrayal. I replied with one line. If it's a misunderstanding, he can explain it in writing. "Dad, you're overreacting. Tyler would never hurt you." I stared at that sentence and felt something snap into focus. He wasn't protecting me. He was protecting the family image. "Always," I replied calmly. He already did." "Dad, call your mother. She's crying." I didn't. Instead, I emailed myself a timeline, dates, texts, the deed visit, Tyler's cosign request, the title company call. I attached screenshots. I treated my life like a case file because that's what it had become. The next morning, Kelsey helped me draft a short, formal letter to Tyler Carter. "You are hereby notified to cease and desist from using Savannah Carter's address, property address, or any identifying information in any loan application, filing, or financial activity. Any further attempts may be reported as fraud and pursued legally." It wasn't cruel. It was clean. I mailed it certified. Then I sent a copy to my parents by email, so there would be no "she never told us." 20 minutes after the email sent, my mom showed up at my door. I knew it was her before I even looked through the peephole because she knocked the way she always did when she wanted to intimidate. Hard, sharp, continuous. I didn't open the door. I spoke through it. "Savannah," my mom hissed, "open the door. Now." My heart pounded, but my voice stayed calm. "No," I said. "We can talk by email." She pounded again. "How dare you send legal threats to your own brother?" She shouted loud enough that I heard a neighbor's door creak down the hall. "It's not a threat," I said calmly. "It's a boundary. You're trying to destroy this family," she screamed. I pressed my forehead lightly against the door, breathing slow. "Mom," I said, "Tyler tried to involve my property in his loan. That's what's destroying trust." "He didn't mean it," she snapped. "He's under stress." I almost laughed, but it came out as a quiet exhale. "Stress doesn't file paperwork," I said. People do. The hallway went silent for a second. Then her voice changed, lower, more dangerous. So, this is it, she said. You think you're better than us because you own a little studio? No, I said. I think I'm safer when you don't have access. She hissed my name like a curse. If you take this further, she warned, you will regret it. I didn't raise my voice. If Tyler tries anything again, I said calmly, I will report it. Silence. Then my mom spoke through clenched teeth. You are heartless. I replied softly. I'm protected. She stood there breathing hard, then finally stormed away down the hall. My hands were steady, but my whole body felt like it had run a mile. I sat on my floor for a minute, staring at the door. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a boundary moment. This was the moment my family would split into two groups, people who wanted me safe and people who wanted me accessible. And in part 7, the consequences finally hit them, because Tyler's lie didn't just touch me. Touched the one thing my parents actually cared about, their reputation. And once the extended family found out why the title company called me, the laughter died for good. My mom leaving the hallway wasn't the end of it. It was just the moment she realized she couldn't bully me through a door. So she did what she always did when she couldn't control me directly. She went wide. She went social. She went reputation. By that evening, Jenna texted me out of nowhere. Jenna, did your mom just call my mom crying? She said you threatened Tyler with the police? My stomach tightened, but I didn't feel surprised. I replied with calm facts. Tyler tried to use my address/property in a loan filing. Title company flagged it. I sent a cease and desist so it stops. That's all. 2 minutes later, Jenna, what? I can show you the email and the letter if you want. Jenna, please. I forwarded her the email I'd sent to my parents. Short, clean, no insults, just the timeline and the request to stop using my information. I attached the title company note and the certified letter receipt. Jenna didn't respond for 10 minutes. Then she wrote, Jenna, that is not a misunderstanding. I stared at her words and felt that weird mix of sadness and validation. Because when you grow up in a family like mine, you're trained to doubt yourself even when you have proof. You're trained to think maybe you are being dramatic, even when a title company is literally calling you. The next morning, I found out my mom had already activated the family rumor machine. My Aunt Marlene called from a number I'd forgotten to block. I answered only because I didn't recognize it. Savannah, she said, voice tight. What is going on? Your mother says you've lost your mind. I took a breath. Aunt Marlene, I said calmly, Tyler used my property address in a loan filing. A title company called me about an attempted lien notice. I documented it. I sent a cease and desist. Silence. Then, a lien? She repeated, stunned. Yes, I said. It didn't go through. But it was attempted. Why would Tyler do that? She asked, voice shaking. I didn't take the bait to insult him. Because he couldn't get approved, I said. And he wanted leverage. My aunt exhaled slowly. Your mother didn't say that, she whispered. I almost smiled. Of course she didn't. My mom never told the part that made her look like she failed to raise a decent man. I can email you the documents, I said. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to stop spreading a story that I'm unstable. My aunt's voice softened. Send it, she said quietly. Please. I sent it. And that's when the tide changed, because facts traveled differently than drama. Drama spreads fast, but it dies when people ask for receipts. Facts spread slower, but once they land, they don't disappear. By lunch, my cousin Brooke texted me, Brooke, Tyler is telling people he didn't do anything. But Aunt Marlene saw your email. People are asking questions now. Then Jenna, Grandma is furious. She said, if Tyler tries to attach debt to family property, he's not welcome at her house. My stomach dropped at the mention of Grandma. Because my grandma, sharp, old school, and terrifying in the best way, was the one person my brother actually feared. An hour later, Grandma called me. Her voice was calm, which was worse than yelling. "Savannah," she said, "tell me exactly what happened." I told her. Clean. Short. Dates. The deed visit. Taylor's COSIN request. Title company call. The attempted lien filing. The cease and desist. Grandma listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Put Tyler on the phone." I swallowed. "I don't have him," I said. "He's blocked." "Good," she snapped. "Keep it that way." Then her voice went colder. "I'm calling your mother." And she hung up. 10 minutes later, Jenna texted, "Jenna, Grandma is on a rampage. She called your mom and asked her if she's raising a thief." I stared at that word. Thief. Sounded harsh. But legally, it wasn't far. The next thing that happened was the part my parents couldn't control. The extended family started talking to each other without my mom directing it. My Aunt Marlene called my mom. My Uncle Ron called my dad. Jenna's mom called Madison, because of course Madison suddenly mattered again when the family smelled scandal. And the questions were simple and lethal. Did Tyler do this? Why? Did you know? And why did you lie and say Savannah was unstable? My mom tried to spin it, of course. She texted me from a new number. "Mom, you're poisoning everyone against us." I didn't reply. Dad emailed me. First email he'd ever sent me in my life. "Dad, Savannah, please. Tyler is panicking. People are calling. Can we talk?" Panicking. Not apologizing. Panicking because the family had seen behind the curtain. I replied with one sentence. I will talk after Tyler puts in writing that he will never use my info or address again, and after you both acknowledge you lied about me running away and being unstable. 2 hours passed. Then Tyler sent an email. From a new address. "Tyler, I did not try to put a lien on your property. I used your address because mail was coming to the house and I didn't want Mom asking questions. I didn't think it would involve your property." I stared at it. That wasn't an apology. That was a confession wrapped in excuses. He admitted using my address. He just claimed he didn't understand consequences. I forwarded that email to Kelsey, the paralegal, and she replied immediately. "Kelsey, that's enough to show misuse. Keep it. Do not engage emotionally. Keep everything in writing." And that's exactly what I did. I sent Tyler a calm final response. Do not use my address or any identifying info again. Any further attempts will be reported as fraud. No calls. No in-person visits. Only written communication. Then I blocked the email too. The fallout hit my parents hardest at the next family gathering because my mom tried to show up like normal, like this was just a little misunderstanding. But people weren't smiling the same way anymore. Jenna later told me, "Jenna, your mom walked in and everyone went quiet. Grandma didn't hug her. Nobody asked about Madison's job. They just watched her." My mom, who lived for being the admired, competent matriarch, was suddenly being viewed as the woman who enabled her son to try and attach debt to her daughter's home. The laughter that used to greet her? Gone. The "you're such a great mom?" Gone. And I didn't have to do anything dramatic. I didn't have to post. I didn't have to scream. I just existed with receipts. And receipts are kryptonite to people who survive on rewriting reality. Part 8 is where it lands emotionally. How I fully cut off the access points, how Tyler's golden status finally cracks, and how I stop feeling guilty for choosing safety over family performance. The strangest part wasn't the drama. The strangest part was the quiet that followed, like the entire family system had been running on noise, and once the noise got replaced by facts, it didn't know what to do. For the first time, my mom couldn't fix a situation with a smile and a story. My dad couldn't smooth it over with a "let's not do this." Tyler couldn't joke his way out of accountability. And I couldn't unsee what they were willing to do when they realized I owned something they wanted access to. The next week, I went full protection mode, not out of fear but out of maturity. I changed all my passwords. I upgraded my bank security. I added a P.O. box so my mail would never touch my parents' address again. I called my building manager and asked, calmly, for a note on my unit. No visitors admitted unless they are on my list. I installed a small door camera, not because I thought my family would break in, but because I'd learned something. People who feel entitled to you don't they respect barriers. Then I did the hardest thing. I sat with the grief without turning it into guilt. Because guilt was my family's favorite leash. They trained me to think boundaries equal cruelty. They trained me to believe that protecting myself makes me cold. Therapy had taught me a different definition. Cold is ignoring harm. Boundaries are warmth for your future self. Dad tried one last time to pull me back with emotion. He called from a private number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Savannah, your mother isn't sleeping," he said. "She's crying all day. Tyler he's falling apart. Please. This is family." I listened to it once, then deleted it. Not because I hated him. Because I refused to be emotionally billed for consequences I didn't create. The next message came from Madison. We weren't even close, but she was suddenly the messenger again. My mom's favorite tool when she didn't want her own fingerprints on the manipulation. Madison, "Mom says Grandma is turning everyone against us. She says you did this." I stared at the text and felt something almost peaceful. Because this time I didn't feel the urge to explain. Madison already knew the truth. She just didn't like what it meant for the family's image. I replied with one sentence. I didn't do anything except protect my home. Then I muted her too. Weeks passed. The family chatter cooled. The drama tried to find oxygen, but without my participation, it couldn't stay alive. And something else happened, something I didn't expect. Tyler stopped being funny. According to Jenna, he got quiet. Not thoughtful quiet. Defensive quiet. He started showing up to gatherings less. When he did show up, people didn't laugh at his jokes the same way because the jokes didn't feel harmless anymore. The golden child glow dimmed the second the family saw he could be reckless with someone else's security. Grandma did what grandmas do when they finally decide they're done. She drew a line. She told my mom in front of everyone, "Stop calling Savannah unstable. If your son wants help, he can earn trust like a man." And my mom, who always dominated conversations, went quiet. That was the real consequence. Not losing me, but losing the audience that fed her. 2 months later, I got an email from Dad. Not pleading. Not angry. Different. "Dad, I want you to know I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I kept trying to keep peace instead of keeping you safe. Tyler has to fix his own life. Your mom, she's struggling with what people think. But you're right. Your home is yours." I read it 3 times. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a full apology for years. But it was the first time he'd ever acknowledged the pattern without trying to soften it. I replied with one line. Thank you for saying that. I need time." Then I left it there. 'Cause time is something my family never gave me. I gave it to myself. The last twist, my favorite part honestly, was what happened inside me. The studio that was supposed to be my embarrassment became my proof. Proof that I could build quietly. Proof that I didn't need permission. Proof that when I stopped financing emergencies, I could finance stability. One night, Tessa came over with Thai takeout and sat cross-legged on my little rug. "Do you feel guilty?" she asked softly. I thought about it. The old me would have said yes. The old me would have felt responsible for everyone's feelings, even the ones caused by their own choices. But the new me took a breath and told the truth. "I feel sad," I said. But I don't feel guilty. 'Cause guilt is what you feel when you've done something wrong. And I hadn't. My family laughed when I moved into a studio because they assumed small meant failure. They didn't realize small was strategy. They didn't realize my name on the deed meant something bigger than property. It meant boundaries made permanent. It meant my life was no longer negotiable. And the moment they saw my name on that deed, they stopped laughing. Not because they respected me suddenly, but because they realized they couldn't control me anymore. That was the real victory. Not humiliating them. Not revenge. Just freedom. Quiet. Legal. Unarguable. Mine.